New tropical storm Lee in the tropical Atlantic is heading on a west-northwest course, and this is going to become a major hurricane by the time we get to the end of the week. And also, maybe the heat wave will be over by the time we get to the end of the week. We'll have to keep our fingers crossed on that. And we will have much more. We'll talk about the long range and what this all means, because it's got to mean something. And we'll find that deep meaning here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show tonight, brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. Mulch, topsoil, and sand, salt this winter, and of course, whatever hardware you need to be safe just in case there's a tropical storm or hurricane up the East Coast. 631-756-1125. You cannot possibly find better prices anywhere. And the website is
OmniTrueValue.com.
Tempest by WeatherFlow, Joe. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system, and you can join the fastest-growing observing weather network on the planet. The referral link is pinned to the top of the chat board. It's also on the descriptor to this video. And if you purchase the Tempest WeatherFlow weather station or just about anything else on their website, because they got all sorts of weather toys and weather fashion, use the coupon code I Want a Weather Station, because deep down inside you do, and if you do, you get
10% off. Lovely, 10%.
Yes. Okay, so Mr. Rayo, by
Yes,
the way,
sir.
for those of you who are new to the Joe and Joe Weather Show, I'm Joe Cioffi, and we never say who we are at the beginning of the show, so I guess we should every once in a while. I'm Joe Cioffi, and
And I'm Joe Rayo.
that's
Yes.
right. And
Yes.
we share the name Joe in common. We're also both Italian. So there. All right.
I saw something yesterday, and I forgot to mention it to you yesterday, Joe, in the Daily News yesterday, a full-page story on, I think, page 6 or 7 of Holy Rosary Church.
Oh, wow. I was thinking about Holy Rosary Church the other day, because it was a beautiful church.
Well, from the outside, it still is. But the story says that the church has become very dilapidated, and now it's up for sale.
Oh, the shame. It was a really beautiful, architectural wise, it's a beautiful structure.
Beautiful, beautiful church. And I looked at that and I said, my God, I had my first communion there.
Were you baptized there?
No, I was not baptized at Holy Rosary, but my first communion was there. I served as the ring bearer for my aunt and uncle at their wedding in 1961. My grandmother, when she passed away, that's interesting. When she passed, one of her final wishes was, no, I don't want to have the funeral mass at St. Benedict's, which was our parish up in the Bronx. He wanted it at Holy Rosary, because they used to live right next door to Holy Rosary. And in fact, my grandparents had to move to the Bronx because the apartment building that they lived in was razed to build the rectory, which in the newspaper article yesterday says is also pretty much of a wreck now as well.
Yeah.
So,
oh, well.
It's very sad.
Well, the ghost of Mrs. Quinn probably haunts that place.
Yeah.
She's still dead, just in case you were worried otherwise. All right, so let's get to weather, and we might as well do Tropical Storm Lee at the onset. And I spent, when I was reading the technical discussion of when they made it a depression this morning at 11 o'clock, just like I did the same thing with Idalia, not intentionally. This time I did intentionally. I tried to read between the lines, and I just got a sense of how they wrote that discussion, that there was a certain degree of concern in the longer term with this, but that's kind of my interpretation of it. But I will say this. You've got probably almost ideal conditions of law for this thing to strengthen. You've got the intensity model guidance that was out before they even made this a depression. There were several models taking it to a Category 5 hurricane, and a whole bunch more taking it to at least a Category 4. I think it's a pretty good bet that we may get there to either a 4 or maybe even a 5 before this is all said and done.
Well, I'm not going to speak for you, Joe, but as far as I'm concerned, from what I said a couple of weeks ago, I'm now eating my words, because I said that if indeed we are moving into a super or major El Nino, El Ninos, especially major El Ninos, usually cause a lot of wind shear over the Atlantic, which usually prevent or preclude much in the way of hurricane activity. And I said, well, if that be the case, even though the forecasters were saying this would be an above normal year, which goes against the grain for a major El Nino, they were doing it based upon surface temperature. The waters are abnormally warm, much warmer than they've ever seen in recent years. And so they said, okay, well, that means that we're going to have a lot of hurricane. And I said, well, no, I think that wind shear is always going to trump
Right.
a very warm surface water temperature. But in the case of what we're going to be looking at in the next 5 or 6 days with Lee right now, they actually said that over the next day or two, there's going to be some modest wind shear that will hold the intensity down. But by the time we get to, let's say, Thursday or Friday, all of that is gone. All of that is completely gone. And now, moving over, again, that incredibly warm water, this thing is going to rev up. And I looked both at the GFS and the European to see just how intense they made this system. On the GFS, for 2 a.m. Monday, this coming Monday morning, for 2 a.m., they have a surface pressure for this thing of 938 millibars. That is equivalent to 27, not 29, not even 28, but 27.7 inches of mercury. And if you think that's amazing, try the European. The European has the storm peaking on Tuesday at 8 p.m., next Tuesday at 8 p.m. at 928 millibars. That is equivalent to 27.40 inches of mercury.
Well, look, I'll say, well, let's take this a step further. Franklin, if you're going to use those models and in terms of the numbers, I wonder whether you may, well, considering what they did with Franklin, where they couldn't even, the models were basically getting it down to the, eventually were able to take it down into the 950s, and Franklin got to 927. So I'll just take a round number and say one of them must have think was like 955 or something. So there was a 28 millibar difference. So let's round it off to 25, and you want to subtract. I don't think it's impossible that you could be 25 millibars lower than what those models are forecasting by the time we get into early next week, which would put it somewhere in the 19s.
Well, the all-time record in terms of barometric pressure is the Labor Day hurricane near Key West in 1935. I think that was like 895 or 894, something ridiculous. I thought it
was 890. Dorian got to 8. Dorian got in the Bahamas back in, what was it, 2018? Got into the below 900.
Right.
I don't know what the bottom was. It was in the 890s, I think.
900 millibars is now we're starting to get into seemingly uncharted territory in many cases. 26.57 inches of mercury. I mean, that is nothing short of absurd. But this is the kind of conversation that the folks at the Hurricane Center may be discussing. They in fact openly said on their discussions, Joe, at 11 o'clock and again at 5 o'clock, they said that we're actually going under the forecasts of several different models, and they're going for 145 mile per hour sustained winds by the end of the forecast period, 120 hours. And they're still saying that that's lower than some of the models were suggesting that this thing was going to. This is going to be a beast. This is going to be a real monster of a storm when all is over, said and done. The last time I think Irma had winds to 175 mile per hour sustained, which I think holds the record for a storm in the Atlantic Basin. So maybe this is going to approach Irma come early next week. We'll see. But this is going to be something to watch.
Well, I just pulled up the intensity guidance that from 18Z 2 o'clock this afternoon. So you have, first of all, I don't know what these other models are with regards to the UKMI and the UKX, I assume, are UK Met models. And let's leave those aside. The other ones, I mean, one takes it to a Cat 2. All the others, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 models all make it a major hurricane, and 10 of them make it a Category 4 or higher. 2 of them take it to a Category 5. I think this is going to be an interesting test of that. Well, we've got the ideal, pretty much ideal favorable conditions aloft going forward. So we have that. But now we're going to, on top of that, have the fact that this is going to be moving through water areas where water temperatures are running so far above normal. So I wonder whether this is going to be an interesting test to see, with the ideal conditions over ocean water temperatures that are 4 or 5 degrees Celsius above average in some places, what you're going to wind up with in terms of intensity when this is all said and done.
Well, it's going to be a real beast, if you will.
Right.
I know if I typed that on Facebook, I'd probably get thrown in jail for about a week. But it is going to be a very nasty, very potent storm system. I mean, we thought that Franklin was one, and it was, but this one, this may be like Franklin's. Franklin may be the baby brother to Lee after this is all over with.
Well, now I've now pulled up the track guidance, which the Hurricane Center commented earlier today about how remarkably tight most of the track guidance is. I mean, to go out 7 days, which most of these models do, but they go out 7 days, and the distance spread. If you throw out the UK Met models, which are way to the left, I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying let's just take them out, because all the other ones are kind of clustered. When you get to the end of the forecast period, you've got maybe a spread of about 200 miles. Yeah, that's a pretty remarkably tight spread as far as the guidance is concerned. And there's a couple of other things that have been running through my mind with all of this. And one is, on the one hand, when you have, usually when the more intense a hurricane gets, the higher up you have to go in the atmosphere to find the steering, to figure out where it's going to go. And they have a tendency to want to move more poleward. In other words, turn more toward the north as they get further west. So you have that. On the other hand, you are going to have a big ridge, a big Atlantic subtropical ridge that's going to be building westward through all of this. So that might deflect it to the left. So it'll be, again, this is going to be interesting to see where we are in 5 or 6 days with respect to all these different factors going on, because ultimately that'll tell us how far west, that'll help us to determine how far west this will get before it eventually will turn northward. And then it will also help us to evaluate if there is any threat to the U.S. East Coast. I'm not saying now that there is. I'm just saying that how this storm obviously behaves with all these different factors working at play. It could make a huge difference down the road for a storm that might make it to 7. Maybe it only gets to 65 and turns, or does it get to 70? Does it get to 72, 73 before it turns northward? And the other issue, Joe, is going to be, and this is changing with every run. Because all the models have different looking upper airs in almost every run. So, right. Are we going to wind up with a deep trough from Great Lakes down to the Ohio Valley and a southerly flow along the East Coast that's going to hold there Or is it going to be something that's more fractured and more progressive because there's all sorts of other short waves running around? Uh, Not an easy forecast, and don't waste your time asking. I'll just tell everybody watching tonight and on the chat board. Don't waste your time asking off of one run, jumping up and down, or that where you're gonna. This is gonna be one of those where you're gonna have runs that are gonna tell you, somebody's gonna get wiped out along the eastern seaboard, and then you're gonna have runs that are gonna go in completely the opposite direction and go well to the right. So right now we're just sort of in. We're just wanting watch mode, watch and wait and see how the models figure out what the upper air is going to look like across the United States and across Canada, especially across Canada, because I think that's where the key lies with regards to where this is going to ultimately wind up.
Right. As I said yesterday, interestingly, most often with hurricanes or tropical cyclones, the thing that the forecasters are most confident in is the track versus the intensity. The intensity forecasts usually are all over the place, but for a change, the intensity, there's no question, I think, that what we're seeing right now is indicating that this is going to be a major hurricane within the next few days. There's no question about that. But there is a question mark because now the models are starting to spray in different directions as to the positioning of that trough and how this is going to guide the storm or steer the storm later on in the period, let's say beyond 5 days, because, 5 days from now, this is still going to be way down, toward, well south of Bermuda and southeast of the Bahamas. So I don't think you have to worry about anything beyond the weekend, through the weekend. But next week, depending upon the strength of that big Atlantic ridge, high pressure ridge, and that trough that's trying to drop on down from Canada, that's all going to tell the tale as to where this eventually is going to go. Now, I don't think that if it were to come up to the latitude of New York, not the longitude, but the latitude, that it will not have the same potency as it will, let's say, on Monday or Tuesday of next week, which would be either a 4 or 5 category. But still, it could be a very, very significant storm late in the period of next week. And that means that we're going to have to watch and carefully see where this is going to go. Because as you just said, Joe, from day to day, things change. Things are going to change markedly, depending upon what model you're looking at. But this is certainly one that is going to be one to monitor for our area and for all of the eastern seaboard next week.
Figured I might as well bring up the sea surface temperatures here and see what we got. If I can read this map, which is a little hard, but oh, good, I can do close up. Okay, so these are the actual sea surface temperatures. They're not the anomalies. And the encircled areas here, so that's 26, 24, 26. I'm assuming that these closed circles that you see north of Cuba and the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico and also northeast of the Leeward Islands, that's got to be 30 C plus water or 86 degrees or higher. That same closed off circle area is also in the Gulf of Mexico. So the ocean's pretty warm. Also, this might be a little bit of a smoothed out map, but Franklin went past west of Bermuda, about a little more than halfway east of North Carolina, west of Bermuda. So there was a considerable amount of upwelling. You also probably had some upwelling from Idalia when that moved off the North Carolina coast and became post-tropical. But oftentimes when you see the upwelling that goes on with tropical systems, that usually only lasts for a bunch of days, and then it just goes back to where it was. And I think that's where we are now, Joe, with the water temperatures off the southeast coast of the United States, where they were upwelled, but it looks like they've come back to mostly 28 C or higher water, which is certainly supportive of a major hurricane from 35 degrees north-south, not north of there, but south of there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I also would like to add to what you just said in terms of if we're ever to get up to this latitude, we could even look at we might as well look at the Atlantic sea surface temperatures close up, which I can get here. Let's see. So
now the thing that could overcome much cooler water, and as you can see, we're in the green area. That's much cooler than 26 or 28 Celsius. But the thing that might help to overcome that, if you're a tropical cyclone, is if suddenly you were to begin to move rapidly in forward motion, because it doesn't spend very much time over that cool water. And again, the forward motion gets factored into the steady, wind circulation going around the storm. So you could still get a case in point, the Great Hurricane of 1938, which was chugging along at about 40 or 50 miles an hour, and it crashed into central Long Island.
Well, interestingly enough, I just put the map up. You'll have it on the screen momentarily. So this is the map from southern New England down through the middle and South Atlantic states. The 28C usually is a good number to use if you want to gauge a major hurricane or not. And it's all offshore, obviously. But the 28C water temperature line, Joe, goes up to about 38 north. Beyond that, once you get north of 38 north, I mean, it really drops off fairly quickly. In fact, ocean water temperatures, the 23 Celsius line is right around or just south of 40. So the water cools off considerably once you get north of 38 degrees north. However, as you point out, if it's moving like a rocket ship, that might, it won't take that much time for it to get from, say, if it were to get from 38 north up to 41 north. So, right. Yeah, so that would probably mean that, there would not be a whole lot of weakening because it's moving so quickly over that water. So, again, a lot to look at here, and we're sort of at this stage right now where we're Bill Goodman's on the show. Bill Goodman's on the chat board, folks.
I see. Yes.
William, if you have an open invitation. If you want to come on the air, just let me know. I will send you the Zoom link. But if you want to play on the chat board, by all means, please do. Bill Goodman, folks, in case you don't know, is from the National Weather Service in Upton, Long Island, which forecasts for the area in and around New York City. Okay, so we've got all these different things that we're going to be looking at, and we're going to be talking about this probably ad nauseum over the next couple of days. So just bear that in mind. And back to, did I get rid of it by accident? I might have gotten rid of it by accident. So let me see if I can find it again. So let's go. First off, here's the forecast. This is the 5 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time forecast for Tropical Storm Lee, which was made a tropical storm this evening. 45 mile per hour winds, 13.2 north, 41.8 west, moving west-northwest at 16. The Hurricane Center has it as a hurricane by Thursday morning, so in about 30 or so hours from now, they have it as a hurricane. And by 2 a.m. Friday, they have it as a major hurricane. It might even happen faster than that. And
2 p.m. Friday, Joe.
2 p.m. Right. It's a regular. It's a non-major at 2 a.m. It's a major at 2 p.m. So let's figure sometime between that time frame it becomes a major hurricane, and then it goes northwestward from there. The last position, it's at 65 north. The thing I look at is in terms of positioning, and this is something again we can carry over the next couple of days. If it's south of 25 when it gets to 65, okay, that means we can kind of go to the next box. So the next target would be, in terms of the threat, is where is it when it gets to 70 west? So if it's somewhere between 25 and 30 north and it's west of 70, That's usually when you have to start to think, okay, maybe it's going to be, maybe it could be a possibility for someplace along the East Coast that you have to deal with this. It's not written in stone. A lot depends on what the motion is at the time it gets there. If it gets to 70 west and it's moving at 335 or 340, then you have to say, okay, well, what does the upper air look like for the rest of the East Coast? But lots to watch in the coming days, no doubt about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Did you take a look and see if this is being picked up on any of Mrs. Ansamble's charts? Or?
Yes, we could go to Mrs. Ansamble's. She's been very busy. She's been quite busy, but I actually she's been, she's on the GFS side. She's also on the European side. So we'll take a look. I just want to. I'm going to just try to get a close-up satellite here of Lee, and all right, so here it is on the floater. It's a pretty well-defined satellite signature here, pretty well defined. You're already seeing that. You always want to look for that feathering of the high clouds on the outflow, and it's already there. So the satellite's telling you that this thing is going to intensify as it continues to move on its west-northwest course.
I'm just answering somebody on the chat board.
Okay, no problem. Let's look at Mrs. Ansamble's, shall we?
Surely.
Yes. All right. We'll start.
That thing is looking pretty damn good, considering it just now has gotten christened with a name, and just yesterday was one of the invest number. I mean, this is like a young ball player that started out in Double-A ball, and now all of a sudden has made it to the major leagues in record time.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty good analogy there. I think it works. Now, another thing, we'll bring up the weather models here, and I just want to point out that run these models, the European, the GFS, in terms of what the upper air looks like, because at the end of the day, you have to look at what the upper air is going to look like down the road, and that'll tell you, that'll tell you, is this going to be something to watch, or is it going to be just an out to sea fish storm? Well, these models have been going in all sorts of different directions, particularly the European. It seems like every run there's a different look to it. Now, Thursday we've got this shortwave trough, and there's a cutoff low there over Lake Michigan, and I'll just so right in here. And this is going to be this next weather front that's going to be approaching. You've got a ridging right off the East Coast now. You've got the big heat ridge that's sort of retreated back down a little bit more to the southwest into southwest Texas and southern New Mexico. And, of course, you've got the flow across Canada, which is cut off from the United States at this stage. And Canada is going to be really, really important in all of this in terms of the longer term. So we'll run this along. And by the way, this is the European that I have up here. So this is the 0Z European from last night. Okay, so let's run this along. And of course that trough goes nowhere. And I saw this, Joe, and I thought, you know what? It's a good thing that the hurricane's not east of the Bahamas, with the upper air set up like this for Friday night and Saturday, because then it would just go straight north up the East Coast. But that trough just hangs there. It doesn't push eastward. So this cold front that approaches on Thursday is going to get hung up along the coast Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and probably into Monday. That trough is still there on Sunday. And then that trough kind of flattens out a little bit on Monday. But then look up just north of Minnesota, and you'll find here comes another short wave. And on the lower right, you see the top half of Lee coming into the picture. Again, this is last night's run. And the European really amplified that trough to the north in last night's run, swinging it down southeastward. And in terms of the timing, the trough axis now, by the time we get to next Thursday, is right along the immediate coast. Lee is now getting lifted up north and northeastward. So if you look at this, you would say, okay, it's just going to go, up and out, maybe toward Nova Scotia, maybe toward Newfoundland. All right, that was the 0Z run. Now we'll go to the 6Z, the 12Z run today, and here we have, Joe, for the same time frame. I just switched it to 12Z. No trough axis down along or just off the East Coast. Now we've got the cutoff up north of Lake Huron. There's a broad, the trough axis runs south-southwest into Texas. It's a much different look. And the ridge also at the same time, which is really important, is popping up in the west and going up into western Canada. We mentioned this yesterday about the negative NAO, the North Atlantic Oscillation, going negative, the Pacific North America Index going positive. So this is kind of reflecting all that with the teleconnections. But the takeaway here is, forget the specifics for just a moment, but the takeaway here is that the Europeans just totally different on this run. And in fact, that trough lifts up, Joe, almost straight north to James Bay, and you got another strong shortwave at Lake Winnipeg that's starting to dive southeastward into the western lakes. So, I mean, if you want to extrapolate this out in your mind, if that thing were to dig down west of the lakes, you would take Lee almost straight northward from here, from this point, beyond next Thursday. So, to me, again, I think the fact that the European is from the 0Z run to the 12Z run made this big change, I think is the more important takeaway. So it's important that you don't literally take any one particular run as gospel, because it's not going to be.
Correct, because it's only going to change. It's only going to change in most cases 12 hours later.
Right, and here's the GF.
And that upper trough looks like it shears away to the north and northeast.
Right, and it wouldn't necessarily pick it up. Now I'm looking at the GFS from the 0Z last night, okay, which again a little bit different. They both have that lead trough over the weekend, which sort of flattens out. Here comes Lee. Here comes a deep low digging down into Wisconsin and the Great Lakes, and Lee just shoots northward as that trough fights its way eastward. It takes an offshore track just east of Cape Cod, goes into Nova Scotia. That was the 0Z run. And then you have the 12Z run today, which said, well, why don't we go a little bit further left? Not a lot left, but definitely left. But here comes your digging trough. Here comes Lee, and it's further west. The upper low lifts up towards James Bay, leaves behind some troughing in the Ohio Valley to the southeast coast, and then up that goes, but closer to the coast. But again, different look. So tonight we're going to have another different look when we see tonight's run, and when we see tomorrow's day run, and tomorrow night's run, and on and on and on. So, again, a lot going on here. A lot of short waves up in Canada. A lot of stuff going on in the eastern half of the United States with respect to the upper air. And then you've got the tropical cyclone besides. So, you're not going to get any answers at this point about where this is going to go.
Well, depending upon where exactly this is, I mean, we would be on the side of the hurricane, we being the tri-state area, which would provide us with wet weather. Of course, the closer the storm track is to us, the more the wetness is going to be, the heavier the rains. Places that are located relative to the storm track, east of the storm track, and, let's play devil's advocate, that could be, maybe Cape Cod or maybe down East Maine or Nova Scotia. They would get the brunt of the very strong winds, potentially damaging winds. But again, this is all speculation. We really would like to know have a pretty good idea of where this thing is going to be going, and that simply cannot be answered right at this moment. We could play around with this and say it's going to be in the general vicinity, but we're going to need to know exactly where it's going to be relative to any one spot for you to get a more specific take on what we're going to get. And again, that's simply not possible beyond, let's say, 4 or 5 days from now.
Right. So on that note, I think, we spent the first 40 minutes of the show talking about Tropical Storm Lee. I think we can lay it aside now and take a look at what's going on at the moment. How high did you get today, by the way?
The highest I saw was 88 degrees. It conceivably could have gotten to 90 before the end of the day. I know that Central Park, for the first time this month, and for the first time since July, finally got to 90 degrees at 1:33 this afternoon. The high was 92 at Central Park, and that came within 2 degrees of the record high for this 5th of September. So that's the first, and we'll see whether or not we can make it an official heat wave with 90-plus days tomorrow and again on Thursday.
You can still see, by the way, the circulation of post-tropical cyclone Idalia, or as I was calling it, Vidalia, as an onion, sitting now southeast of Nova Scotia. It's actually weakened quite a bit. This morning, the low was down in the low 980s pressure-wise, but it has gotten weaker. But you still see that swirl out there. It's not a tropical system. There's actually an arm of patchy cloudiness that kind of worked its way southwestward from there, from the storm into southern New England and down into New Jersey. Sort of see it continuing to push southwestward. I sat in. We had some sun today, but we also had a lot of clouds. It was 61 here this morning. It was nice and cool, and I think I got to 82 for the high. And you can see on the satellite here in North Georgia, there's cloudiness. There's like an arm of clouds that moved eastward. I drove up today toward Chattanooga, Joe, in Tennessee. And Chattanooga, yes. It's wonderful. I crossed 2 state lines within 15 minutes. I'm in Georgia. I'm only 20 miles from the North Carolina state line. I'm probably 30 miles from the Tennessee state line. But, you drive up into North Carolina first. So you have your GPS on. When you pass those signs, the GPS will tell you, "Welcome to North Carolina." So it did that, and then I made a left turn and got on 64 and went westward, and then in 10 or 15 minutes, I crossed the Tennessee line, and it was like, "Welcome to Tennessee." It was almost as exciting that one drive down from New York where I drove, and there was a construction, so I had to go through these roads in that area where Maryland, West Virginia, and Virginia are really close together. And there's a route, I forgot the route number, but you drive in, and your GPS, like every 5 minutes, in fact, less than that, every 2 or 3 minutes, you're crossing a state border. So in 1 minute you're in Maryland, the next minute you're in Virginia, the next minute after that you're in West Virginia, then you go back into Virginia. It's crazy. Not a whole lot going on with showers and storms. You can see where the lightning strikes are. There's 2 distinct lines showing up on the satellite loop tonight. And those red and yellow flashes are all lightning strikes, which we can take a look on the radar. There is some action from the standpoint of storms in parts of western Ohio, western Kentucky, western Tennessee, northern Mississippi. 1 flash flood warning there. A line that runs from well east of Kansas City now, southwestward into Oklahoma and into north central Texas, and there's a bunch of severe thunderstorm warnings with that line along the way. And we've got some heavier thunderstorms and downpours in northeastern Minnesota and moving out of northern Wisconsin and also in eastern North Dakota. The Storm Prediction Center, that's where the risk areas are. We've got 1, 2, 3 severe thunderstorm watches that are in play. 1 in Minnesota, and the other one's in Missouri and into Oklahoma. So that's moving along. And over the next few days, tomorrow into Thursday morning, we're looking at a marginal risk. Michigan, southwest New York, western PA, Ohio, eastern Indiana, down into Kentucky, to northwest Georgia, northern Alabama, northern Mississippi. And day 3, Mr. Rayom, day 3, SPC has a marginal risk for just about all of New York State except southeast New York
Yeah.
Northwest New Jersey, all of Pennsylvania except westernmost Pennsylvania, all of Maryland, down into northern Virginia. So that means isolated severe thunderstorms with that next cold front uh, possible for maybe late Thursday or Thursday night. I thought maybe it might be more Thursday night than anything else. But any feelings on that with respect to severe weather for Thursday night?
Well, I think that front is unfortunately going to linger. It looks like now, not only through Thursday night and Friday, but maybe right on through the upcoming weekend. So it may very well be that we'll be underneath the risk of or threat of convective activity, shower and storm activity through Saturday and maybe even Sunday as well. And yeah, it's always possible that there could be a little severe activity involved. We'll watch that carefully, but if those of you who enjoyed this past weekend, it doesn't look like this weekend is going to be a repeat performance, unfortunately.
Correct. Okay. Rainfall. WPC. Hold on a second. I understand, Joe, that the television, that the smart TV at WPC is not working, so they may not be watching the Joe and Joe weather show tonight. just so you know. I got it from the I have friends in very low places, and they tell me these, they feed me little bits of gossip.
Socially low.
Yes, exactly. WPC with rainfall amounts of, they have a nice, pretty solid concentration for eastern PA down to south central PA, northeastern Pennsylvania, northwest New Jersey. They got a 2 to 3 inch little red area splotched out there, even up into the Catskills, and then it cuts off sharply once you get down to the coast. But you could certainly every bit of 3/4 of an inch to an inch and a half from Virginia all the way up into Maine, except for the immediate coastal areas. You also have half inch to an inch maybe for Kansas, Oklahoma, parts of Missouri, down into Texas. Not a whole lot in the southeast. They've got no rain for me. They got a big white hole there in the northern half of Georgia for the next 7 days, and also in the western United States. So I have the GFS up. I have it up, Joe. And as we take a look, tomorrow another hot day in the east, correct?
Yeah, it looks like we'll be getting to or even above 90. I think most locations tomorrow.
All right. And the hottest weather, by the way, has been in the hottest temperatures where it was the upper 90s yesterday and also well into the 90s today over Maryland, Virginia, southern Pennsylvania, southern New Jersey, Delaware. That's where it seems like the hottest temperatures are occurring. It's also been very hot up to the north, up into New England. So we don't want to leave the folks in New England out here. But here comes the next front. Remember that trough's going to stall out to the west. So this front makes it near the coast and it just sort of gets hung up. And it's got some showers and thunderstorms around Thursday evening. You see them in upstate New York, some back in Pennsylvania, western Virginia, western North Carolina. Doesn't really do very much during the overnight. And then, kind of they sort of fire up a less so on Friday. I kind of think this is a little underdone if you ask me. And then Saturday they fire up again. So you're certainly going to have to include the chances that there could be some showers and thunderstorms starting from late Thursday. You got to put them in for Friday. You got to put them in for Saturday. And you got to probably put them in for Sunday too. And there's Lee on the lower right, inching closer. The first trough pulls out. The next trough drops in. Here comes another cold front moving toward the east coast. Surface low goes up north of Lake Superior and occludes. The front slows down. And again, what does the upper air look like by the time we get to the middle part of next week? That's going to be the big question with regards to what happens with Lee in the longer term.
Well, if you want to take a look, I'm sharing right now.
You are? Well, let me just be so kind as to just put you back up on the screen so you could share with all of us. And there you are, Mr. Rayo. You have the screen.
Well, I said sharing now. What's on the screen right now?
It's a little behind, but you have that the risk of heavy precipitation map.
Correct. That's from the Climate Prediction Center.
Right. That'll be popping up on the screen short. There's a little delay.
But the area encompassing the potential for heavy precipitation is in the time frame from September 13th to September 16th. And lo and behold, Joe, that is the approximate time frame that Lee is going to be close to the Atlantic seaboard. And so what they're doing here with this particular map is suggesting now, and it's only a slight risk here, but suggesting that there could be some heavy precipitation, maybe generated by Lee in that corridor from the Carolinas north to south central New England. We'll have to wait and see. But I think in the back of their minds at CPC, Climate Prediction Center, that's what they're thinking of. They're thinking about the potential from Lee for sometime middle or latter part of next week.
Makes total sense. By the way, 95 likes. So we're only 5 shy of 100. So if you get us to 100, that would be great. I hope you're liking the Joe and Joe Weather Show tonight. We're on Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. And I would venture to say, Joe, that if things keep going the way they're going, we might have a show on Friday or Saturday. By the way, can you unshare and share and unshare again?
I think I just did.
All right, let me see if I can get you back on the screen because it's being so uncooperative. Nope. All right, why don't you share and then unshare again?
All right.
I don't know. This is a Zoom issue. I don't know why they haven't fixed this up. Have you shared and unshared?
I'm sharing. Hang on. And now I'm going to unshare.
And all right, hold on a second. There you go. I got you back finally. Okay, good. All right. 113 likes. Do you know who the super chat hit was?
Yes, Leon Probitsky.
Oh, thank you, Leon. Most appreciated. We're banging the tip jar. All right. I think I have Briller Jeopardy.
All right.
I've got a secret. Oh, he didn't say he wanted a link. I just got a message back from Bill Goodman because he was trolling the chat board earlier in the show. You see what those weather people, see, Joe, seriously, you see what these weather service people do, how they just kind of hang out in the back, they lurk when I talk about people lurking in the background.
They're all lurking, Joe.
They're all lurking, yes. No, in all serious, Bill's got an open invite to come anytime. He just said he just got back from the gym late, so we'll probably see him at some point, maybe in the next week or so. Okay, let's do a little bit of Briller Jeopardy tonight. And where is it? Okay, so here we go. So here we go, folks. This is all New York City stuff today. So this is for Central Park. What was the highest temperature ever in the month of September?
I know that.
Don't rub it in.
It was only once has it ever hit above 100. 102. And I even know the year, 1953.
That's correct. So, Joe Rayo, you're amazing. And I'm sure the people on the chat board all appreciate having had all the fun taken out of the first question. So here's the second question. What was the lowest temperature ever in the month of September in Central Park?
I don't think it's ever dropped into the 30s in September. I'll say 43.
You'll say 43. Well, let's see.
And Chuck Cardillo agrees with me.
David Fuller said 48. Don Coughlin said 45. Alan Rupa says 42. Christopher Alley says 41. Conroy Jet says 37. And Don Coughlin has now put up another one, and he says 39, Joe. So do you know what the answer is? It's Jack Benny. It's 39.
39. So it did get in there.
Yes, in 1912. 1912. What was the coldest daytime maximum?
Oh, the coldest daytime maximum?
The coldest daytime maximum.
Oh, dear me. Well, I'll say 48.
Okay, well, you could say 48, certainly. And Chuck Cardillo says 51. And you know what? Chuck Cardillo's got the correct answer. And so did Maggie P. 51. 51 is the lowest daytime maximum. And the last question. Oh, no, there's also a bonus tonight. What was the greatest amount of precipitation for the month of September?
I have a feeling it might have been associated with the passage of Floyd in 1999 through our area. So I'm gonna say, what am I gonna say? I'll say like 9 inches.
You'll say 9 inches. David Fuller says 14. Michael McGuire says 15. Alan Rupa says 11.5. Chuck Cardillo 12.3. Northern Grace 10. Don Coughlin says 10.12. Latex Dream says 10. Dennis Cassia 12. William Uber 10.4. Lori Shurchek. Hi, Lori. I think you might be new to the chat board. Hi. Welcome. 10. Maggie P 12. Tobe's NWAJAGU 13 inches. I'm sorry, I couldn't make it. I couldn't even make an attempt at that one for pronunciation. I'll just tell everybody, Michael Azara 14 inches. You're all too low. And while you're contemplating that, that hint, Anthony Sparaccio just hit the tip jar. Happy birthday to Anthony's dad, who turned 90 years young today. Happy birthday, Anthony's dad.
Yes.
Okay, so you're all too low. And David Fuller, 21 is too high. Northern Grace is getting close at 17. Chuck Cardillo, you're so close at 16.1. The answer is 16.85, Joe, in 1882.
Wow.
1882. And here's the bonus question. What is the record for the most 90-degree days in September? At Le Parc des Centrales. The most number of 90-degree days in the month of September. David Fuller says 7. Mr. Snow gaming at 20. No, that's just a little bit too high. Bill Goodman says 6. Northern Grace said 6. Chuck Cardillo says 6. And you know what?
I'm going to say 5.
You're going to say 5?
Yeah.
Well, you're all wrong. The answer is the most number of 90-degree days in the month of September for Central Park is 8. 8. And that was set in 1961.
Wow.
So there.
That was the year I started kindergarten at Holy Rosary School in Manhattan.
Yes, exactly. I just realized Bill Goodman's trolling the chat board tonight. With the TV set broken at with the television set broken at WPC, he might be funneling. He might be funneling this show somehow on his mobile device to the offices there. So, because they don't want to miss they can't possibly miss a program, correct?
If they want just the WPC and an
okay,
SPC,
in case there's somebody at WPC or SPC that doesn't have a sense of humor, okay, I'm kidding. All right, I'm kidding.
I want to share one picture, and I also want to share a story.
Okay, well, you can do what you want. It's half your show.
Uh,
Although I hold the contract, but go on.
all right, at 4 o'clock this morning.
Hold on, Joe, because you can't. It's doing that thing again. Let me see if I can bring it back this way. Nope, that didn't work. All right, do me a favor, unshare and share again, please.
Share and share alike.
Oh, this is so. All right, hang on. Nope, still not there. Let's try this. All right.
We had better luck last night with Lip Torn.
Yeah, I know, right? Okay, I got it back. Go on.
All right, so at 4 o'clock, when we go to bed, we put our new dog, Mr. Sweeney, who's a terrier mix, in the kitchen and also the TV room. He has ample access to 2 couches, and he takes, usually his choice of what couch he wants to sleep on or whatever. But in recent nights, for whatever reason, and there's a door that separates the kitchen from the hallway down to where we are in the bedroom. And for the last, few nights, he's been scratching at that door at the ungodly hour of like 4 o'clock in the morning. And, that's a sign that the dog has to do something. And so this morning I told her, I said, stay in bed. I threw on my clothes, went into the kitchen, put the leash on him, took him outside, throwing a few curse words at him, because who wants to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to do that?
What colorful words did you use, Joe?
And it is
you can't use colorful words on this show, on this program.
Emily's show. But any case, when I went outside, and what I normally do when I go outside is always look up to see what's going on in the sky. And I looked up, and there was a half moon, a waning gibbous, not quite a last quarter moon. And it had, as you see in this photograph here, a big, beautiful, full halo, 22-degree halo around it. And also inside the halo with the moon was the planet Jupiter. And I looked up and I said to myself, wow, this is nice. I would have missed this whole thing. I looked down at the dog. The dog had already done his thing. And I looked at the dog and I said, I take back what I was just saying to you. Thank you very much. I would have missed this whole celestial array if it had not been for you. But in any case, this photograph, which was not taken by me, but by a friend of mine on Long Island. Apparently, Joe, this swath of high cloud cover, which led to the halo, was also evident on Long Island. I'm 50 miles north of New York City, and I was seeing it as well. So, and the guy who took the picture said the same thing. He was taking the dog out at that early hour of the morning, and he saw it. He got his cell phone out and took this photograph. So here you go. It looks full, but actually it was a half moon. Here's Jupiter, and here's that big 22-degree full lunar halo. Usually when you see this in the wintertime, that's a sign that within 12 or 18 hours, we're going to have precipitation, rain and or snow. And I was saying to myself as I was going back in the house, I said, now what in the world could be causing a halo, ice crystals, 25, 30,000 feet high at this time of the year, early September, with temperatures probably expected to get 2 or above 90, which they did. But in any case, there it was. There it is on your screen. And I'll thank again Mr. Sweeney, my dog, and my wife's dog. Actually, it's more my wife's dog than my dog. But in any case, thanks to Mr. Sweeney, I got a chance to see this celestial display this morning.
By the way, just going back to Lee in terms of timing, don't we have a new moon next week?
Yeah, well, yeah, the moon is going to be approaching new phase next week.
Was it next Wednesday or Thursday?
I don't have the almanac in front of me. Oh, maybe I do. Hang on for a second.
All right. While you're looking it up, Chuck Cardillo hits the super chat tip jar. Thank you, Chuck, and thank you for the nice compliment. Trying in us breaking down what's going on weather-wise with over the next week to 10 days, especially with the upper air.
New moon is next Thursday night. It occurs at precisely 9:40 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Thursday the 14th.
All right. So if this thing times out for later next week, there potentially could be title issues.
Yes.
If that's the case. Okay.
Yes.
You disappeared. So you know what? This is probably. Let me see if I can bring you back. I'm going to just try once.
Well, we're at the end of the show, so it doesn't
Exactly.
really matter.
It doesn't really matter. So I'm just going
Don't bring me back.
All right. So I won't bring you back then. So let's just say goodnight. And the Joe and Joe Weather Show brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, 631-756-1125 for all your hardware needs, and a good place to go in case you need stuff if there's a tropical system that we have to deal with, which we don't know yet. 631-756-1125 is the phone number. The website is...
Oh, the website.
Yes.
OmniTrueValue.com.
Tempest by Weatherflow. Hit your cue, for God's sake. Tempest by Weatherflow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system. Join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is pinned to the top of the chat board. It's also on the descriptor to this video. Use the coupon code I want a weather station for any purchases that you might make on the Tempest website, be it this or any of the other lovely weather gadgets and weather fashion that they have. And if you do, use the coupon code. Joe Rayo, what do they get?
Oh, I don't know. Oh, wait a minute. 10% off. That's right.
Yes. All right, folks. We'll see you tomorrow night at 7:35 p.m. Mark it down. Night, night.
And thanks to Leon and Anthony and Chuck for hitting the tip jar tonight. Always, always appreciative.
Yes, very definitely. Thank you very much, folks, for hitting the tip jar. Good night.
Night.